All right, y'all. So number one wants us to graph y equals x to the cubed plus 5. So I'm just going to graph that on my calculator, then pick A, B, C, or D, okay? So let me share my calculator. Let me write that problem down real quick. So it was x cubed plus 5. So I'm going to share my calculator now. I'm going to go to y equals, and I'm going to put in my x cubed, arrow right, and then do a plus 5. All right, y'all. So when I hit graph, so I get my curvy graph, and it looks like it should go right through the center, but it looks like it moved up 5 units. So I want to pick the picture that went up 5 on that one. And y'all, that looks like that'd be C here. It's went up. So I'm going to choose C and then go to my next question.
My calculator is not letting me do that. Like it's not letting me type it in.
So what do you mean? What's it doing?
Like it says, hold on. It said I go to the y equals and I type in my equation and then I push graph and it says invalid.
Okay, so let me go to my calculator real quick. So it's like invalid dimension.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so let me think on you. So, um, I'm gonna click second window. Oh no, go. Let's click window on that. Click window. What is yours showing right here on window?
No. Uh, exactly what yours is showing.
Okay, so now let me ask you this. When you're like this on the y equals, is plot one, plot two, or plot three highlighted?
Plot one.
Okay, we got to turn that off. So what
How
you're
do you do
going to
that?
do, huh?
How do you do that?
Okay, we're going to hit second y equals. Now plot one should be saying on right now. So hit enter on plot one, and you see there's an off and an on.
Yeah.
I need you to put that on off. Now quit that and let's go back to y equals.
It worked.
It
Thank
worked
you.
that time? Okay. So good to go on that one, right? All right, y'all. So usually if you get that invalid dimension, it's talking about for some reason one of those got turned on somehow. All right, y'all. Number two here, they're giving me f of c equals 9/5 c plus 32. So they want me to know what Fahrenheit temperature corresponds to a negative 5 degrees Celsius. Okay, so I'm going to work that by hand real quick and then we will come back and choose one of those four answers. Righty, so basically I'm finding f of that negative 5. So I'm going to take my equation, put in a negative 5 for the c. Um, now, whatever number they give you for C, you will be able to divide it by that denominator because every time they've done it, it's been a multiple of 5. So I'm going to just take this negative 5 and divide by 5, and that's going to become a negative 1. So I got 9 times negative 1 will be a negative 9 plus my 32. And then negative 9 and 32 will give me a positive 23. Now, I'll show y'all the other way to do that. You can punch that thing straight on your calculator. So I'm gonna quit this y equals stuff. So y'all, I could do my 9 divided by 5, parentheses, negative 5, and then that was plus 32. So either way, you're going to get 23 on that, okay? So y'all, that's what we're hoping to see on these answers, right? So there it is. 23 would be my B. All right, y'all, moving on to number 3. Is this a function? So let me make it larger. Y'all, if this is a function, it will pass the vertical line test. And the vertical line test says that if a vertical line can intersect that graph more than once, it is not a function. So y'all think about it. Draw those vertical lines on it. So let me do this one on paper for y'all. All right, so I basically have my graph here. And that graph was sort of up like this. So come in and draw vertical lines. And y'all, no matter where I draw vertical lines on that, it's only intersecting at one time. So that is definitely a yes on that one. Now I know what y'all are thinking. Y'all just did the one-to-one stuff on the last test. It ain't one-to-one because a horizontal line would intersect it twice. But y'all, this is definitely a function. So you would put yes on that one. So if the vertical line intersects it more than once, you're going to put a no on that, okay? Oh, y'all, let me write this down. I'm going to knock this down on my calculator real quick. 4x plus 3y plus z equals -8. X minus 3y plus 2z equals -4. And then 11x minus 2y plus 3z equals a -32. All right, so I'm going to put this into the calculator and let that calculator do the RREF stuff to it, okay? So here we go. All right, so I'm going to clear everything off. So I'm going to go to second x-1 for the matrix. I'm going to go to edit and hit enter. So y'all, this is 3 equations. So it's going to be 3 rows, enter, by 4 columns. All right, now we just put in the numbers in front of each variable. So I got a 4 for the 4x, 3 for the 3y, 1 for the z, and then -8. Now I'm going to go down to the next row. I had 1 for the x, -3 for the y, 2 for the z, and then -4 for that answer. On my last row, I had 11 for the x, -2 for the y, 3 for the z, and then -32 for that answer, enter. All right, I got all my numbers entered in, so I'm going to hit second mode to quit the screen. Now, we hit second x-1 for the matrix stuff. We're going to arrow right into math, and then arrow down until we get RREF. So we want the reduced row echelon form, that's called. So hit enter. And then y'all, for the third time, hit second x-1. So since matrix A is my 3x4 matrix, I'm just going to hit enter. And y'all, when I hit enter, my 3 numbers will be on the right side, the far right column, and they'll be in order from my X, my Y, and my Z.
Where did we get RREF from? Remind me.
Um, so I was here at second, whoops, let me go back. So I hit second x-1, I arrowed right to math, and then I went down until I found my RREF. All right, y'all, so the enter is the right side, the -3, the 1, and the 1. are my X, Y, and Z. So in my answer blank, I would put -3, 1, and 1. And this one you had to actually put them in. So I had -3, and then I would put in my 1, and then my 1. Okay, so your three answers, this one you had to actually put in, and then y'all, we hit next. To who? All right, y'all, let me make this a little bigger. They want a domain on this one. So the domain is the x's from the smallest x value all the way to the greatest x value. So A, B, C, or D on that. And focus on the x's. So D, yeah, that was quick. So that's going from the first dot at -4 and then the second dot at a +4. So D on that one, y'all. So remember, domain is the x's. All right, y'all, let me graph these. I'm going to do this on my calculator. So I got y greater than or equal to x plus 3, y less than or equal to 1 minus x. All right, y'all, so let me go to the calculator. I'm going to clear everything off. So for this one, I went to y equals. And I'm going to put my first equation in, which was x plus 3. Now this one was greater than, so I'm going to go all the way left of the equals and hit enter until it pulls up a greater than. And remember, greater than is a triangle that flashes above that's bigger on top. So I'm going to go to y2 down here now and put in my second equation, which is 1 minus x. That one was less than, so I'm going to go left of the equals and hit enter until I get the triangle that is bigger on the bottom. All right, y'all, once I hit graph, I'm looking for where they intersect. And if you notice, they intersect on the left side, that double shaded triangle area. Now, y'all, most of y'all got the newer calculator, so let me show you on that one. So let me click the calculators over. So the same thing on this one. Go to y equals, put in x plus 3. Arrow all the way left. But remember, on the newer calculators, when you hit enter, it asks you for the color, which I'll leave it blue. And then on the line, I got an arrow until I get the triangle greater above. And then I'm going to come down and hit OK. So now I go down to y2. My second equation was 1 minus x. And that was less than, so I'm going to go all the way left and hit enter and come down to the line that is bigger on bottom again and then hit OK. All right, y'all, I'm going to hit graph. And if you notice, I'm looking for where the red and blue intersected each other, and it's still on that left side. So in MATLAB, we would click B, which is the only answer that has the left side shaded, okay? All right, y'all, let me see. All right, number 7. All right, so I'm going to sort of draw my picture here while I'm looking at this. So I got an extension ladder, and the foot of this extension ladder is 9 feet from the wall. Then it tells me that the height the ladder reaches on the wall and the length of my ladder are consecutive integers. So they want to know how long is the ladder. So y'all, let me show you what I'm doing on that. All right, so the foot of my ladder was 9 feet from the wall here. Then it told me the height right here that the ladder reaches on the wall and the length of the ladder are consecutive integers. So that means if the height the ladder reaches on the wall is x, then the length of the ladder is going to be x plus 1. So that's what they mean by consecutive integers. If this was 5, 5 plus 1 would make that 6 and vice versa, okay? Now, we got a right triangle, so we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. So y'all, here's the thing. C has to be one of these three sides. Now, A and B, it don't matter between the other two sides. But your C squared has to be your longest side, which is going to be the ladder. So no matter what, that's going to be C. And then I'm going to let this one be A and that one be B. But y'all, it don't matter which one of these is A and B, okay? What does matter is C has to be the longest side. All right, so let's plug in for A. That's 9. So I'm going to have 9 squared plus B is X. That's going to be X squared. That's going to equal C squared, which is X plus 1 squared. Now, y'all listen to me. Y'all's problem, the only difference between my problem and y'all's is that 9. Y'all will have the consecutive integers just like me, okay? All right, y'all, so working this out, 9 squared would be 81 plus my x squared. If you take the x plus 1 squared and FOIL it, you'll get an x squared plus 2x plus 1. At this point, everything will be the same as mine other than the 81, okay? All right, so now, since it looks like it's quadratic, I'm going to get all the x squareds on one side. So I would come in and subtract x squared from both sides. But y'all, what happens to all the x squareds? If you notice, those x squareds are going to cancel. These x squareds are going to cancel. Yeah, Brandon, they're all going to cancel. So what's going to be left is the 81 equal to the 2x plus 1. At this point, the only difference between my problem and y'all's is that 81. Okay? Whatever number y'all had squared will be in place of the 81 there, okay? All right, so now to solve this, it's not quadratic no more because all the x squareds canceled out. So we're going to subtract 1 and then divide by 2. So y'all, that's going to give me 80 equals 2x. And then I'm going to divide by 2. So that's going to give me 40 equal to my x. Now they want to know how long is this ladder. Well, the ladder equals x plus 1. Well, x was 40. So that ladder is going to be 40 plus 1, which equals 41. Don't forget to add 1 to your x and get that ladder, okay? All right, Brandon, you got 41? Perfect. So let's go get that 41 put in. So I think this one you actually had to put in your answer of 41, okay? All right, what's it say? Find the domain, okay? So they're giving me f of x equals x squared plus 5x minus 14 over x squared minus 2x minus 8. So the domain, we're only concerned about the denominator, and the denominator cannot equal 0. So what we did on these, we would set them equal to 0, and then we factored this. Y'all, and if you don't like factoring, you got that little quadratic formula website page we gave y'all. back into module 2 stuff, okay? I think it was called a quadratic formula calculator or something like that. Um, but y'all watch this. X squared is an X and an X. If the last number is negative, these factors will have unlike signs. Now, find me factors of 8 that will subtract and give me a 2. So factors of 8 that have a difference of 2. Now, I know
Two,
the larger
four.
one's going to be, what do y'all got, 4 and 2? And then the larger one will be negative since the middle's negative. So, Christina, you're perfect. You got the -4 and a +2. All right, so we're factored now, set both of these factors equal to 0 and get our final answers. So here I'm going to subtract 2. I get x is a -2. And y'all, this one I'll add 4 and get x is a +4. So the domain is going to start at -infinity until we hit -2 first. We're union around -2 till we hit +4. And then we're union around that +4 and head off towards +infinity. So we're kicking out a -2 and a +4. So I think this one had multiple choice on it, didn't it? So let me see. Yeah, they got multiple choice. So see, they got the signs backwards on B. We need D, which got the -2 and then our 4. So we choose D on that one and move on. Oh, now 9 might be one of the trickier ones. This is the difference quotient. And they're giving me f of x equals -2x squared plus 6x plus 5. So y'all, this one I actually got to write in the answer for. So this is one of the trickier ones. But y'all, I'm going to write this problem over on a full sheet of paper here. So I'm finding the difference quotient, f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. And they're giving us f of x is a -2x squared plus 6x plus 5. So really, the trick of this problem is getting the f of x plus h. So let's find f of x plus h. Because y'all are giving me f of x over here, and it's always h on the bottom. So if we find this, we'll be able to plug everything in and then start simplifying it. So f of x plus h, we're going to take these two x's and put an x plus h in place of them. So I got -2 times x plus h squared plus 6 times x plus h and then plus my 5. All right, y'all. So the first thing I would do to this is figure out x plus h squared because it's got the exponent. It goes first. So bring down your -2. When we FOILed this out every time, we got an x squared plus 2hx plus h squared. All right, I'm just bringing everything else down now. So y'all, when you do x plus h squared, you're going to end up with the same thing. All right, so your next step is to distribute your -2 right here and then the 6 right there. So that's going to give me a -2x squared. -2 times 2 is a -4hx. -2 times h squared is a -2h squared. All right, then you got 6 times x is a 6x. 6 times h is a 6h. And at the end, I would bring down my plus 5. All right, look at that. You got six things sitting here, and none of these are like terms. So since none of these are like terms, this whole thing is going to go in for the f of x plus h. All right, so let's plug everything into our formula. F of x plus h is a negative 2x squared minus 4hx minus 2h squared plus 6x plus 6h plus 5 minus f of x. F of x is the negative 2x squared plus 6x plus 5. And y'all, this is all over our h. All right, so remember, everything in the first parentheses that does not have a h cancels with stuff in the second parentheses. So this negative 2x squared cancels with this because a negative times a negative makes that a positive 2x squared. This 6x right here cancels with this negative 6x. And then this 5 cancels with this negative 5. So everything in the second parentheses always cancels. So what's left? Negative 4hx minus 2h squared plus the 6h all over h. And y'all, at this point, y'all should have three things on top and an h on the bottom. So the question is, what would be my final answer on that?
Will it be negative 4x minus 2h plus 6?
Brandon, that's perfect. Good job. Because remember, one H canceled here. One of those two H's canceled with that H, and then that H canceled. So, y'all, that's perfect. So that's what we would put into our math lab for that one. Negative 4x minus 2h, you said, and then plus 6. All right, good job. And then we hit next on that one. All right, y'all. So let me draw this one. G of x equals a square root 5 minus 6x. Now, I'm going to just graph this on a calculator. So let's go to the calculator. I'm going to go to y equals. I'm going to clear all this off. All righty. So y'all, that was a square root. So I'm going to hit second x squared here to get that square root. And then it was 5 minus 6x. All that has to be up under that little radical there, okay, under the square root. And y'all, we're just going to hit graph, and we want to find one of those four pictures. So look, it looks like it's starting at about that one right there, and it's going to the left here. Okay, so let's look at those four pictures and see which one starts at positive 1 and then goes left. So y'all, I think it looks like C, right? Yeah, C is starting at the positive side. D is starting on the negative one side. So I need to go with C because mine started at the positive one and goes to the left. Okay? All right, y'all, then we got next. All right, let's see what y'all think on this. And I'm going to make this a little bigger. So remember, the minimum is the little valley and the maximum is the peak. So A, B, C, or D would y'all pick? Which one has the right maximum and the right minimum? And I will say this, it's got both of them, so it cannot be B or D. Because B and D says you got none on one of those, okay? So we're either looking at A or C, it looks like. Curtis, what you got, a C? So let's look. Yeah, because it's got a maximum of 1 at x equals 0. And then that relative minimum is a -3 at x equals 2. So good job, y'all. It is definitely C on that one, okay? Alrighty, so let's see. We're starting with the graph of x squared. They want to know how can a negative x minus h squared plus 11 be obtained from that y equals x squared graph. So the first thing you're looking at is the 8 units. That 8 is being subtracted from the x. So anytime I subtract it from the x, I'm going to move to the right. Perfect, Carlethia. So I know that's going to go right 8 units. Well, y'all, A, B, and C all have 8 units to the right. So then that negative in the very front reflects me across the x-axis. And y'all, at that point, I've only got one choice, right? 8 units right. Only one of them says I'm reflecting across the x-axis. So it has to be, what you got, Brandon? B, it looks like. And then, yeah, it went up 11. So perfect. It would be B. Okay. Um, Y'all remember, at this point, we did not reflect anything across the y-axis, okay? All we reflected was over the x. All right, y'all, so B on that one. So then we hit next on that. All right, y'all, I'm going to write this one down. What's this, 13? We're going to find the zeros. Now, I will do this by hand, but y'all had that quadratic formula calculator back in Module 2 that you can use. And notice what's telling me I'm going to do that is all these got radicals on them, okay? So let's work this out, and then we should get one of them 4 answers there. So we're using the quadratic formula, x equals -b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. All right, so let's see. A will be 2. Y'all, B will be the 9. And then C will be our 3, okay? We're going to plug them in for our letters here and see what we get. So x equals -b, which is 9. So notice, although this 9 is positive, you got that negative there already. So plus or minus square root b squared will be 9 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, c, which is 3, all over 2 times a, which is 2. All righty, y'all, so let's go. That's going to make that a -9 plus or minus. Under the radical, 9 squared is 81. All this is being multiplied. So since I only got one negative, that sign's going to stay negative. So -4 times 2 is -8. And then that -8 times 3 is a -24. All of that over 2 times 2, which is 4. All right, y'all. So one more step, and let's see what that equals. So bring down your -9 plus or minus. 81 minus 24. Let me see what that is. That looks like a 57, and all of that over 4. All right, y'all. So at this point, you would try to see if this 57 reduced. If it reduces, it would have to divide by those perfect squares. 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5, 6 times 6. What's next? 7 times 7. Everything else would be bigger than that. So 57 will not divide by none of these numbers and give me an exact answer. So y'all, here's what I'm looking for. -9 plus or minus the square root of 57 over 4. All right, let's see. What we have, -9 plus or minus square root of 57. Oh, and y'all be careful. B and D are really close. Rebecca, we got to go with B, right? Because look on the bottom. You have a 4. D has a 2 on the bottom, so y'all be careful on that, okay? Don't go too quick and pick D, but it is definitely B. I got 14, find the vertex. They're giving me f of x equals 4x squared plus 24x minus 3. Now y'all look at these 4 answers. They all got a different x value. I got -39 for A, 39 for B, -3 for C, and then a +3 for D. So if I can at least get the x value, I ought to be able to pick one of them 4 answers, okay? Now I will work it all out, but I was just noticing that on that. Alrighty, so for me, A is 4, B is 24, C is -3. I'm using the vertex formula, which is -b over 2a. That'll give me the x value, and then f of -b over 2a will give me the y value. So I'm going to get the x value first by doing -b over 2a. That's going to equal a negative times b, which is 24, over 2 times a, which is 4. All right, y'all get a -24 on top. 2 times 4 is 8 on the bottom. And -24 divided by 8 will give me a -3. So no matter what, my x value is -3. Now, if you want to get the y value, you would find f of -3. You'd put a -3 in for the x's. So 4 times -3 squared plus 24 times -3 minus 3. All right, y'all, so -3 squared is 9. 9 times 4 is 36. 24 times -3 is a -72. And then at the end, I got a -3. All right, so let's see what we get. 36 minus 72 is a -36. -36 minus 3 is a -39. So I'm looking for a -3, -39 for my vertex. All right, y'all, so let me go back to the math lab. So if you notice, once I got that -3, I could have picked C because that's the only one that had the -3 like I needed. And then there's that -39 we got for the y value. So yeah, if you can at least get the x value, you should be able to get this one right, okay? All right, y'all, so let me write this one down. This is what, 15 f of x equals -4. Oops. F of x equals -5x squared times x minus 9 times x plus 3 cubed. So we're going to find the zeros and their multiplicity. All right, so to find my zeros, I'm going to set this negative 5x equal to 0. I'm not worried about these exponents. I'll set the x minus 9 equal to 0, and then the x plus 3 equal to 0. And really, anytime you got this single variable like this, it's always going to equal 0 because when you divide that by that negative 5, you're still going to get a 0 for that one. Here, to solve the second factor, I'm just going to add 9. And again, x is a positive 9. And then my third factor was x plus 3. I'm just going to subtract 3 and get x is a negative 3. So here's the question. This 0 of a 0, what is its multiplicity? And then we'll do that for this one, and then for the third one. All right, so y'all remember this. The multiplicity is equal to these exponents up here. So since the 0 came from this one here, Cardiff, what do you got, a 2? Good job. That means this one has a multiplicity of a 2. What about this one? This one came from this factor, x minus 9. But it don't have an exponent out here, so what is it? What you got, Carlithia? Good job. That is definitely, if there's not an exponent, it's a 1. And then how about the third one? X equals negative 3. Its multiplicity is 3. Good job. So I'm looking for this answer. 0, multiplicity 2, 9, multiplicity 1, negative 3, multiplicity 3. All right, y'all, let me go find that. All right, so that's only got 2, so let's see here. Negative 3, 3, 0, 2, 9, multiplicity 1. Looks like I'm going with B on that one. All right, and somehow they got like 4 on that D, so definitely um remember that negative 5x is one big term, okay? All right, y'all, so we got that one, so we hit next. All right, now I'm going to graph this one. Now, y'all look, I'm going to show you how to set your calculator window. Do you see how these graphs are going from negative 70 and 70 on the y values? So let me show you what to do to get that to happen. So let me write that problem down. Because if you set the window, you'll get one of these 4 graphs perfectly, okay? So I'm going to go to the calculator. I'm going to go to y equals and clear everything off. So I'm going to put in my function, which was x, and then parentheses, x plus 4, close parentheses, open parentheses, x minus 3, close parentheses, open parentheses, and then an x plus 2. Now, I want my graph to match theirs. So you see the window button? You're going to hit that window button. Now the x's were good. They went from negative 10 to 10. The y is what I'm going to change. My y minimum was negative 70. My y maximum was a positive 70. Now that I got them y values to match up, when I hit graph, we're going to pick one of those 4 graphs, okay? So y'all, let's hit it. Graph. And there you go. So it looks like a W, and it's got this little hump to the left of the y-axis, okay? So let's go pick one of those that matches that. Oh, no, I actually think it's the one I had highlighted here, right? Look at that. If you pull that up, That looks exactly like our graph. So yeah, we're going to go with A on that one and move on. So it either had to be A or C, but C has that little hump on the right side of the y equals, okay? So let me show you that one. See, that's got the little hump to the right side. We needed it on the left. So we're going to pick A and move on. All right, y'all, this one we're going to find the vertical asymptotes. So let me write this down. X squared plus 5x minus 14 over x squared minus 2x minus 8. So, y'all, to find these vertical asymptotes, you do the same thing we did with that domain a while ago. We're going to take the bottom and set it equal to 0. So remember, vertical asymptotes happened where these were undefined. So that's why you do them the same way you do the domains. So we got an x squared is an x and an x. The last number is negative, so these will be unlike signs. No, that's almost the same as I factored a while ago. Didn't we have an 8 while ago when I had to find factors of 8 that gave me a 2? And we ended up with what, a negative 4 and a positive 2 on that. So set both of them equal to 0. So y'all, the first one, I'll subtract 2. I get x is a negative 2. And then this one, I would add 4 and get x is a positive 4. Now, since this one had this stuff on top, I'm going to factor it real quick and make sure these factors don't match these ones. Because remember, if these factors on top match the factors on bottom, it sort of cancels out one of your vertical asymptotes. So doing the top one here, x and x, the last number is negative, so you got unlike signs. Factors of 14 that equal 5 would be 7 and 2. The bigger number would be positive, smaller number negative. All right, y'all, so I don't have an x plus 7 here, and I don't have an x minus 2. So neither one of my asymptotes will cancel. So I need the x equals negative 2, x equals 4. And y'all, really, I haven't seen any of them cancel on this problem. So you will keep probably both of your asymptotes, okay? So y'all, what do we need? An x equals negative 2, x equals 4. So I'm going to go with C. And y'all be careful. Although B has the right numbers, it has the wrong variable. Vertical asymptotes are always the x's. Horizontal asymptotes were the ones with the y, okay? And they didn't ask for horizontal, they only asked for our vertical. All right, y'all, 18. Stuff we did on this test. F of x equals 8x minus 3. G of x equals 5x squared plus 5x minus 5. They want me to find G compose F of a negative 5. All right, so let me do that by hand. And y'all, they got 4 answers here. Whoa, them some big numbers too. All right, so we should come up with one of those big numbers, okay? All righty, so this is like G of F of a negative 5. So first off, I'm going to find F of negative 5. Well, here's my F. So F of negative 5 will equal 8 times negative 5 minus 3. All right, so let's see. 8 times negative 5 is a negative 40. So negative 40 minus 3 equals a negative 43. We're now putting that negative 43 into our g of x. Okay? So that means I'm finding g of a negative 43. Woo, that's about to be a big number, y'all. Look here. 5 times negative 43 squared plus 5 times negative 43 minus 5. All right, so I got a calculator that'll knock that out really quick. So let me share that calculator. I don't want to quit that screen, clear everything off. All right, y'all, so I had 5 times parentheses negative 43, close parentheses and square that, plus 5 times negative 43, close parentheses, and then minus 5. All right, y'all, when I hit enter, I should get one of them 4 big numbers. And when I hit enter, I get 9,025. I think that was one of my choices, right? So that was definitely RA. Good job. Oh, now look here. 19's the same problem, but they did not give us a number on this one. So we're going to have to simplify it only. So f of x is a 4x squared plus 2x plus 4. G of x is a 2x minus 3. They want me to find G compose f of x. All righty, y'all, so let's go work that one. Now, like I said, on this one, they didn't give me no values to put in. So this will be like finding G of f of x. I'm going to start with f of x. F of x equals this trinomial here, 4x squared plus 2x plus 4. But y'all, since they didn't give me no numbers, I cannot do nothing with this. So this whole thing here, the entire function goes into the g. So that means we're finding g of 4x squared plus 2x plus 4. We're going to put this whole thing in for that x. So I got 2 times 4x squared plus 2x plus 4. And then at the end is a minus 3. All right, y'all, so to do that, distribute your 2. So 2 times 4 is 8x squared. 2 times 2 is 4x. 2 times 4 is an 8. And then I got that minus 3. So can you go further on that?
Yeah, change the 8 to a 5.
Okay, so we're going to get what, an 8x squared plus a 4x, and you said plus a 5? Looks perfect, so you had those like terms right there. All right, so we need to find that on our 4 answers. So we had what, 8x squared plus 4x plus 5. So y'all, that looks like B. So what makes you happy is when you go find these answers are actually on that test, okay? All right, number 20, find the inverse. They're giving me f of x equals cube root of x minus 8. So this is similar to one I had on that test 4, but it's a little different because this 8 ain't under that radical, okay? All right, we're finding the inverse. We're going to change the f of x into a y. So that equals a cube root of x minus 8. So y'all, if you're finding the inverse, what was your next step? All right, we're going to switch. So Carlitha, good job. So it's going to be x equals a cube root of y minus 8. So y'all on this one, since this minus 8 is not under the radical, we're going to move it to the other side by adding an 8. So I get an x plus 8 over here equals a cube root of y. Now, to get rid of this cube root, we're going to cube both sides. So we're going to cube the x plus 8. We're going to cube that cube root of y. So this cube root and that cube cancel, leaving me a y. Y'all, I cannot do nothing to that side, so it's going to stay at x plus 8 cubed. Now, the last step, MathLab will put that inverse notation, and then you'll have your x plus 8 cubed, okay? So, we want one that looks like that. Oh, and look at that. Okay, so A is close, but it's minus. We need C, which is the x plus 8 cubed, okay? So be careful. These answers are really sort of similar together. All right, also, let me see what this. So this is going 6 and 6. So I'm going to graph this on the calculator. But let me say this. We know what the exponential graphs look like. So since they're subtracting 3 from the x, it's going to move right. So let's see which one of these. A is flipped over somehow. Looks like B went down. Brandon, what you got? D. So, yeah, because C looks like it went left. And then Brandon said D. And that one looks like it went right. So I would actually go with D on that. But y'all, let's just graph it so we can look real quick. All right, y'all. So we had 4 to the exponent x minus 3. All right, when I hit graph, now let me fix my window back. So the quickest way to fix the window back to a 10 by 10 is to hit zoom and then number 6 standard, and that puts your window back at a 10 by 10. And Brandon, that looks just exactly like what you picked. Looks like it went to the right and up. So definitely looks like that D there, okay? Yep. All right, y'all, 22, convert to exponential. They're giving me ln 5 to the a equals 1.2. All right, y'all, so similar to what we had on our test, but still different. So if I'm going to rewrite this, I got to know what the base is of the ln. So a ln is a log base what? Oh, you're putting 10. Now, I will say this. Remember, a regular log is equal to a log base 10. But y'all, that's a ln. So a ln is actually a log base E. Remember that little E, y'all? That's the base of the ln logs, okay? So a ln is really a log base E. So the base is a E. The exponent is the 1.2. And that's going to equal that result of 5 to the A. All right, Ella, you had it. I just didn't see that. So it is definitely the E on that LN, okay? All right, so I want one that looks like an E to the 1.2 equals 5 to the A. So E to the 1.2, and y'all, the only one I can go with is D on that one, okay? All righty, this is 23. It's going to be a little bit of a long one because of that radical. So let me write this down. Log base B, it's a 4th root of x to the 5th, b to the 3rd, over y to the 4th, and z to the 12th. All righty, so let me go work this one out. And y'all, will say this. The first step I do to this is get rid of this radical. So I'm going to bring down that log base B. Since all this is under the radical, I'm going to put it in parentheses. So if I want to get rid of that radical, do y'all remember what my exponent would be? Now I'll give y'all a clue. The top number will definitely be a 1. But what I'm looking for is what's the bottom number on this?
The 4.
It'll be a 4.
Up 4. There you go. Because remember, the index of the radical becomes your bottom number on those, okay? All right, so what we're going to do now is all these exponents have to be multiplied by that 1/4. So on the x's, 5 times 1/4 is 5/4. On the b, 3 times 1/4 is 3/4. All right, on the y, 4 times 1/4 is 1. So that's basically a y to the 1st. And then on my z, 12 times 1/4 is 3. So you're basically taking the exponents and dividing by the 4. So 5 divided by 4, 3 divided by 4. 4 divided by 4 was 1. 12 divided by 4 was 3. All right, so y'all, all I've done so far was get rid of the radical and rewrite it. So now I'm going to do them as sums and differences. These two factors on top are positive. The two factors on bottom are subtracted. Distribute the log b to everybody. So log b of x to the 5/4 plus log b of b to the 3/4 minus, these two are minus now, log b of y, and then minus the log b of z to the 3rd. Okay, so now you're at that point. Well, what's next?
So you move like all the 5/4, 3/4, and the 3 in front of the log. But
Well,
then the
I'm going to
second
move
the b.
that one. But what's this one going to equal? Log base b of b to the 3/4.
Just the 3/4, right?
Just the 3/4. There you go. So we're going to have 5/4 log b of x plus this one equals just the 3/4. Then minus, this one didn't have an exponent other than a 1, so that's going to stay a log b of y. And then minus, bring the 3 down, log b of a z. So perfect. So y'all will have one that matches like this that's just going to equal the exponent, okay? All right, y'all, so that looks like what we need. 5/4 log b of x plus my 3/4 minus my log b of y minus 3 log b is z. So let's find that one. So y'all, looks like A to me. B, they don't have the 3/4 right. On C, they started out right. Oh, but they put a +3 at the end instead of a -3. So y'all look at them signs really close because, whoo, C is close other than the plus and minus at the end. And in D, they put a multiply in there. And then they got some kind of crazy stuff in the parentheses. So we definitely want A on that one, okay? Just make sure your stuff is positive and negative like you need. All right, y'all. So on 24, they're giving me a formula. B equals, what is that? 1,400,000 E to the 0.02 T. So this is the population of a small country increases according to this formula. And they're telling you that T is in years. Well, they want to know how much people will be in the country after 2 years. So y'all, I'll let y'all work out that one. A, B, C, or D. Put a 2 in for that T and see what you get. And really, that's all you're doing is just plugging in your 2 and seeing what you get. So let's see. I'm going to clear all this stuff off. So I had 1,400,000. Second ln to get my e with the exponent. And then that was 0.02 times t, they said was what, 2 years? All right, Brandon, let me see if I get what you got. What you get, 1,457,000. So it's got to go up for sure. So 1,457,000, 135. Yeah, I think that was rounding it to the nearest person, right? So Brandon, let's see if we got that in there. Okay, you perfect. That was a B on that one, y'all. Okay. All right, let's see what number 25 has for us. All right, so 25, they want us to solve 2 to the x equals 14. All right, so that was just on our test. So I cannot multiply 2 times itself and equal 14. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So I can't rewrite it using a 2 as a base. So that means I'm going to take logs of both sides. So I'm going to do the log of 2 to the x equals log of 14. And the reason we took a log is now we can bring down our x. So I get an x times log 2 equals a log of 14. And y'all, last step, divide both sides by log 2. So that'll equal this log of 14 divided by log of 2. So y'all, that cancels. So figure this one out and let's see how they want us to round that one off. So one of y'all figure out what log of 14 divided by log of 2 is. And it looks like they're going 3 decimal places. And y'all just remember to close those parentheses when you do your logs, okay? So 3.807. So let me see. So you do what, a log of 14 divided by your log of 2. All right, so 3.807 looks good to me. Even that would be what? D for you, so 3.8 something, yeah. So D on that one, y'all. All right, y'all, so that is your final exam review. Your final exam is going to be really close to that, other than those numbers, like we said, being different here and there. Okay? So, any questions on that? So I'm going to stop my recording so I can get